Welcome everyone to the fourth Horror Fest. We're calling it Better Undead Than Unread because we have some great authors and great stories we're sharing today. Isn't that fun? We have Derry lined up here at 11. We've got some great events going on until our last one starts at 9 o'clock tonight, so please feel free to come and go as the whim takes you. But now we have two other fantastic storytellers from Shawnee Library who are sharing their talents with us today, and I will turn it over to them.
Thank you, Gagia. Shandon, are you on and ready?
Aye, that I am, lass.
And a fine thing it is. All right, our first story today is set in New York City, and the title of it is Debt, and it's a piece of fiction by Victor LaValle. Her cell phone rang for the 10th time in an hour, and for the 10th time, she let it go to voicemail. When she opened her purse on the sidewalk, it was only to get her keys. She entered the lobby of her building, but before she reached the elevator, the phone rang again. Reception died inside the rising car, and she breathed audibly with relief. The doors opened, and she walked the hallway to her apartment. 20 feet from her door, the phone buzzed again. She juggled her purse and her dinner and unzipped the purse, ready to throw the phone against the wall. But then she saw the number, a 305 area code. She pressed the button quick. "Mom, are you okay?"
Samantha Cooley, I've been ringing this phone since morning.
It wasn't her mother. It was a man. Samantha stiffened.
Samantha?
It was her father. His calls were as rare as a solar eclipse. She set down her bags and hung her head. "I'm sorry, Dad. I thought you were someone else." Her father cleared his throat twice. A tick that meant trouble.
Someone came into our window today and smashed it.
Samantha touched the wall for balance. "What are you talking about?" Her father raised his voice slightly and enunciated each word.
A man walked into the yard of our home and smashed our kitchen window with a brick.
"Oh, my God! Are you all right? Is Mom?"
Your mother and I were in the living room. We weren't hurt.
Samantha realized where she was now, standing in the hallway of a building she'd been living in for only 3 months. She felt exposed. She picked up her purse and 2 plastic bags and walked. Okay, no one's hurt, that's good." She rifled through her purse for her keys again, tilting her head and raising her right shoulder to keep the phone pressed to her ear.
Samantha, before this man ran away, he shouted something. I didn't hear him too well, but your mother did.
Samantha found her keys, turned the top lock. The click echoed in the long hall.
He said, "Tell your daughter this is about what she owes us."
Samantha almost dropped the phone. "Are you serious, Dad? Is this a joke?"
You think I joke about someone attacking your mother and me?
Samantha stepped inside, dropped her purse, and nearly tripped over it. She stumbled forward in the dark while the door slammed shut behind her. "Didn't Mom want to replace the kitchen windows anyway?" she half joked. But her father didn't laugh.
Your mother told me not to call you. She didn't even want to be in the house when I did. You better not be in touch for a while.
He hung up. Samantha stepped into the kitchen holding the bags, the phone still squeezed to her ear even though her father wasn't there. She flicked the light switch beside the oven. She could have screamed but didn't. There, sitting cross-legged on the kitchen floor, his back against the fridge, was a man she didn't know.
You're back.
Samantha's reaction surprised even herself. She lifted the plastic bag in her right hand and said, "All I have is Chinese food." The man pushed himself up, brushed at the wrinkles of his cheap sports coat. Samantha noticed on the floor in front of him a large pile of her old mail. Maybe he'd been looking for uncashed checks. Arranged on the small breakfast table were her DVD player, an iPod, a coffee maker, and an electric toothbrush.
I'm going to need more than Chinese food, Samantha.
Samantha felt fear in her toes, running up through her legs. She couldn't move. The front door wasn't so far off, but she couldn't even make herself lower the bag of food. "You're not she began, but she didn't know how to finish the sentence. You're not supposed to be here. You're not staying. You're not going to hurt me. The man stood very tall. He had a long, narrow nose that pointed downward, almost over his lip. He looked like a stork, actually. Samantha tried to memorize his face, but her eyes wouldn't focus.
My name is Paul Horvath, and you didn't answer any of these. But at least I see you got 'em.
Samantha stared at the pile of mail. Horvath? Where did she know that name?
If you'd ever picked up your phone, I wouldn't be here now, and my associate wouldn't have thrown a rock through your parents' window.
Now Samantha remembered him.
Hello, Miss Cooley. My name is Paul Horvath. This concerns an urgent business matter. Would you please return my phone call at blah, blah, blah?
How many times had she heard that voice, that phrase, and just deleted the message? Dozens? Sometimes there were 9 or 10 in a single day. Samantha felt her stomach drop, like when she was a kid and her mother had caught her swiping money from her dad's wallet. Her face was hot. She blinked rapidly. The last thing she wanted to do was cry. To compose herself, she went to the cabinet over the stove and took out 2 plates. She set them out on the counter and took out the Chinese food. Brown rice, steamed vegetables, an order of dumplings.
Well, at least you're not spending your money on gourmet food.
He looked at her, then quickly shook his head, as if ridding himself of a moment's sympathy. Samantha opened the white cartons. Do you want a fork, or can you handle chopsticks? Horvath frowned, as if disappointed he hadn't scared her.
Fork, I guess.
That helped Samantha relax a little. At one school in Suffolk County, where she'd been a substitute teacher for 2 months, a 13-year-old boy had pressed a gun to her thigh while she passed his desk. He just wanted to see her cry. And she had cried. But the experience had toughened her. 2 college degrees, and that's the most she'd earned out in the real world. A little bit of backbone. Samantha opened the drawer for the silverware. The knives shone in the light. She pulled out a fork and slid the drawer fast shut. Horvath picked up his plate, but just stared down at the white cartons of food. Samantha served herself. She wanted desperately to run, climb out a window, anything. But instead, she took her plate and sat at the breakfast table. Using her chopsticks, she brought a clump of rice to her mouth and chewed slowly. Horvath finally took a couple of dumplings and sat down across from her. The DVD player and the iPod and the coffee maker and the electric toothbrush were in his way. What's that all about? She said, pointing with her chopsticks. Horvath's long nose twitched.
Collateral.
The DVD player's mine, but not the rest. Horvath looked confused.
You have a roommate?
I'm subletting. The place came furnished. Horvath deflated in his chair. I pretty much live by sublet. Well, this was true. She'd moved 11 times in the past 6 years. I keep a storage locker for clothes. When the summer's over, I go in and get all my winter stuff. When the winter's over, I go back and make the switch. She flicked at the shoulder of her white short-sleeved blouse. 4 years old and fraying at the collar, but a luxury when she'd bought it. Running to teaching assignments all over town had kept her thin, which allowed her to keep wearing the same clothes. That, plus she often skipped meals. Horvath shook his head.
Miss, I don't make much money either, and I live a lot better than this.
Samantha bit into a piece of broccoli. I used to think suffering was part of the point of coming out here. Low pay, even less respect, the worst junior high schools in the city. She'd actually felt all that was romantic once.
You could have paid off something.
Horvath popped a dumpling into his mouth. On my salary?
You could have picked up the phone.
Samantha considered this. Despite her wish to defy Horvath, she couldn't really disagree with him. She had, after all, run out on her debts. And now those debts had grown. $30,000 in student loans had, by now, ballooned to nearly $70,000. She'd never felt she had enough to afford a payment, not even the minimum of $100 a month, not even $50 a month. Kat has found it. Saving seemed impossible. She'd always assumed she'd get a full-time teaching job someday, a regular income from which she could start to repay. She still believed it would happen. She just hadn't managed it yet. To avoid the whole business, she would move into a new sublet before the billing statements could catch up each month. And she stopped offering forwarding addresses. Maybe the debt would simply disappear if she ignored it long enough. Sometimes she even bought lottery tickets, thinking she'd hit it rich and pay off the loan in one lump. She kept hoping something would happen, that things would break her way. She knew this wasn't logical, but still she hoped for it. So, what do you want?
5 years I've been after you, Miss Cooley, and you treated me like a stink bug. I have no doubt that if I let you go now, you're just going to disappear again.
Samantha didn't want any more food. She didn't even want to look at it.
It's getting late, Samantha. I suggest we come to some sort of arrangement.
Samantha looked into Horvath's strangely youthful face. What kind of arrangement? Horvath stood up. On reflex, Samantha slid back in her chair.
I was here before you got back. I looked through every closet and every drawer.
I told you, none of this is mine to give.
I understand that, but I have an idea.
Samantha watched as Horvath went to the countertop near the oven. He pulled out the drawer containing the silverware.
I'm really not asking for much. Then he reached into the drawer.
At the hospital, Samantha stuck with her story about hurting herself while cooking. This, despite the nurses and the doctors all commenting on how perfectly clean the wound appeared to be. It was bad enough that the doctor actually called the police. She said she had to because she suspected Samantha might have been a victim of domestic abuse. But Samantha told the cops no more than she told the hospital staff. Her wound was dressed, she was given a prescription for pain medication, and then the cops drove her back to her apartment. They walked her inside and checked every room, but Horvath was long gone. The cops noticed the blood streaked across her kitchen counter and the meat cleaver in the sink. The cops, two good guys, then spent about 15 minutes trying to help her find the top half of her right pinky. She played along with it. When they discovered nothing, she tried to act surprised, but of course she wasn't. She'd watched Horvath wrap the top half of her finger in some paper towels, which he folded neatly and deposited into the right front pocket of his pants. Samantha walked the police to the door and wished them good night. Their debt wasn't completely settled, Horvath had explained. He couldn't just erase $69,086.37 with a cut. Not just one. But this could count as a kind of payment. Before he raised the cleaver, he'd given her a choice. The finger, or a $10,000 payment. He'd give her until the end of the month. He'd waited for her to decide, but of course there was no real decision to be made. Samantha couldn't imagine going through with it, but already she felt the shock and pain drifting into memory. She even felt a little proud of herself. Horvath was the one who looked squeamish afterwards. And when he left, she only owed him $59,086.37. Now, as she got into bed, she held up the wounded hand. The physical pain was bad, but sometimes debt felt even worse. Samantha lifted the other hand. She wiggled all 9.5 fingers. $10,000 for half a pinky. How much could she afford to pay down using this new accounting? She closed her eyes. Her phone was silent, and soon she fell asleep. Whew, that was Debt by Victor LaValle. And he is a fiction writer at Columbia's Master of Fine Arts program. And his most recent novel is Big Machine. And